So thanks for joining us for Brett's celebration of life. We got a little bit of a window today from the rain, and I think that was on purpose. Um, so that was very nice. And as Brett does or did, kind of took things as they come. So that's kind of how we're going to do it today. And we're planning on letting Jerry and Pat talk a little bit, and Joelle. There's a few of us that have a few things that we'd like to say about Brett, share some memories. We invite all of you to come up and share a memory if you'd like. So with that, I think I'd like to start with Jerry and let you say a few words.
Thanks, Grant. You know, there's a lot of thanks need to go around to a lot of people. It always turns out that there's a lot of family, and I call it extended family, through high school, through college, through where he worked, and you share all of that. And so you're our extended family, and we thank you for coming here, Pat and Joelle and I. Thank you much for this. It's a good opportunity for us to talk about Brett and the humorous side of things. And there's a lot of humor there. It could be spread around, and enough stories for a lot of people, I think, if we wanted to take them all in. The people we also need to thank, the people that own this. The people that own this are the Koch family, K-O-C-H, and it's the spokesperson for them is Susan Koch. And Susan is a graphic designer, and she knew me and knew what we were going to do. So I phoned and asked her. I said, this may be one of the few occasions where we're asking for permission. I think there were a lot of events that took place here, and she laughed and said, yes, I'm sure there were. A lot of bonfires here and a lot of celebrations by a whole set of people. We knew it, and Brett knew it as the Grove. Gary Palmer, Rob, through his comments, sent back and said he knew it as the Summer Place. I had never heard of that one before, so I thought there's always something new to learn in this process. And, you know, I'm going to tell you my little quick story. Before I do that, though, a thanks to Grant, to Rob, and to Jerry for helping set this up today and getting this underway. And thanks to all of you for coming. Brett liked the high life, and you know that. He enjoyed the good times and the good times in life. And I always remember one thing that, and I'm going to take a moment to show you something. I always was interested in what kind of a gift I would get from Brett at different times. Well, the last one I got from him, now you know what a shoehorn is, right? You can buy a shoehorn for about $1 maybe. $5 if you really went upscale on it, something. Here's the shoehorn that I got from Brett. Now watch this process here. Nothing easy about this. Come on.
You use it quite often, huh?
Gifts last a long time this way. Now that's at least a $40 unit. And I laugh at that every time I see it. I think about that. How often do I really use that? You would? Okay. Well, anyhow, that's my little story, and there's a lot of other stories I could keep telling about Brett, but I think I'll let Pat come up and share a little bit with us, dear.
I haven't cried yet today, so I'm going to try not to now. We lived out here for 15 years, and I would say the best 15 years, because our kids could be kids. They came down, they loved the Grove. They'd ride their bikes down here, and we always knew they were safe. There were no Uncle Purvies driving around. They could just have a good time, have a party here, and it was just really nice and good people. We all lived distances apart, but we were all close. And one of Peggy Vespa's dad, we were friends, and she lived a long way away, but distance didn't seem to make any difference because we were friends. But and stories about Brett, I guess the one I'll share is there's a drainage ditch out there. And we had a pretty good snowstorm, and Brett disappeared one day and was gone and was gone. I thought, what in the world? So finally I slogged out through knee-deep snow to the drainage ditch to see what was going on. And he had gotten inside of a snowdrift and carved out a house. There was a place to sit and all this stuff that he had done inside of this snowdrift. That was one of the great, it was one of the great things of living out here. You know, they didn't have computers, and they made their own fun and did their own thing. And I don't know any more stories, and there's some I don't want to hear probably. There's only one that's a mystery. Is we had been gone and we came home, and there was a donut on the kitchen chandelier, and no one has ever confessed to that donut. So I don't know how it got there. But anyway, maybe Joelle?
About that situation.
About the donut?
Brett brought a bunch of his college buddies home, and Brett and I had extra keys to the house because we were supposed to be staying in Ankeny. Well, we stayed home, and Brett came home from college apparently the day before and had a giant party with all of his friends. And so the next day, my girlfriend and I brought our boyfriends over and had a little party. And Mom and Dad confronted Brett before they confronted me. And Brett says, yes, we had a party. We did it all. And I had seen the donut on the chandelier. And I figured out that he had been there because there was Budweiser in my fridge and the refrigerator. And my dad back then drank Coors, I think. So I'm like, Brett's been here. So whatever happens, he'll confess to it. So he did, and I never ever said a word. He said he did it all. So, yeah.
Things you find out.
I know. Well, you know, one of his friends that isn't here that he grew up, it was Brett, Jerry, and Scott Kroger.
Oh.
Boy, let me tell you, they pulled pranks on me because I'm 2 years younger. Brett and Scott Kroger and Scott's little brother taught me to ride a bicycle on our gravel driveway. So I got it down pretty good. And then when I got going, they all were sticking tree sticks in my spokes, so I was I was crashing and wrecking everywhere. And I said to Brett, I said, I know what you did. You can't lie to me. And I said, something will happen to you. And a few days later, he had this green bicycle with the extended long front end with the banana seat. And it had rained, and we were both out on the bikes, and he tried to pop a wheelie over a mud puddle. Well, it happened. He did a flip, had to go to the doctor. It had to have stitches throughout his hand from popping the wheelie out in the gravel. And I said, see what happens, you know? But one of my favorite memories when we were little, we lived in the house down here. Prior to that, we lived in an old farmhouse. So Brett and I, Dad always said, well, you guys were always in a competition. We weren't. I just knew I could be as good as my brother, and I wanted to be as good as him because I was younger. And my favorite memory is when we'd race down the wooden steps in our pillowcases head first, like we were doing the skeleton. And then there's a door at the bottom, and we just see the first one to hit it open. My dad would always be sitting there in his chair, and we'd always get in trouble, but we never stopped doing it. We came up with the most creative things. Oh, and Brett also taught me to light matches in his closet. And he went downstairs. So I'm like, okay, matches, a bag of, and a big giant bag of extra homework he could do over the summertime. So he taught me to light a match. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. He blew it out and he went downstairs. So I'm just standing there. So I'm like, okay, I'll light a match. And I caught his bag of homework on fire. And I went downstairs and I asked Brett, can I have a glass of water? And he said, well, what do you need a glass of water for? And I said, there's a fire in your bedroom. Brett ran up. It was actually Brett that beat it out with his Boy Scout t-shirt. So I'm like, I really got him a double dose because he had to take his Boy Scout shirt to put out the flames. No one was harmed in that production. But the past 2 years, he came and stayed with me through several trips at my apartment in Ankeny. And I really got to know him as an adult. I know everyone loved to pick on me when I was young, but as I got older, he really became a really sweet person, kind, generous to a fault. If he'd run into somebody at the convenience store, he'd tell them a story and have to take pictures with everyone, you know, and he really was a maverick, I'll tell you that. And when he first came to stay at my place, he said, Joelle, your place is missing something. And I'm like, okay. So he disappeared for the day and came home with a 1977 Leonard Skinner album in its sleeve. And the album was put out like 3 to 7 days before Leonard Skinner died. And behind the band, there were flames. And so it was a band album. And Brett came into my room and put it on my shelf like an altar. He says, now I'm home. So, you know, all the Leonard Skinner I had to hear in his car going to school. I tell you what, there's not a song I don't know, but he was big into Leonard Skinner. And I found out all these years later, I used to play the soundtrack to Grease in my bedroom on this little portable player. And when Brett came back and him and I were going out to eat, he played the soundtrack to Grease. And I'm like, you don't have to play my album for me. He goes, no, Joelle, I heard you play it so much. I love the album now. So he's always playing Grease when he'd come back, you know. So all my memories are great of him. I'm also bipolar, and I suffer from mania and anxiety. But I take my medicine every day because it makes me be the best that I can possibly be. And somewhere, unfortunately, Brett didn't want to choose to go that path. So when something doesn't feel right or something's not right, people need to seek help. Because I take my medicine. I love myself greatly. I love to speak and talk. And when I was young, I didn't have any of that self-esteem. But I had a hard path in life, but I learned to like myself. And when Brett came back, he said he was more prouder of me than he was of himself. And it just shocked me. I couldn't believe he said that to me. So there's a song that's like on the pop charts that reminds me of him, and it's called I Rise Up. So every day I rise up and I smile with my brother. So he will never leave my side. And now he gets to party with Leonard Skinner up in heaven. So, you know, so my grandpa always said God's kingdom has many mansions, and I'm sure his is something so way out there you couldn't miss it. But yeah, we spent our childhood up here. We dreamed and read books, and teenage years we brought girlfriends and boyfriends up here, but it was never anything bad. It was just like our little piece of heaven. And I remember the first day Brett brought me up here, Mom would finally let me come up to the Grove. He walked me all the way up here holding his hand, and it was just like a magical kingdom. And though a lot of trees are missing, Brett's heart and my heart are here. And that's all I have to say.
I'm Grant Griswold. I went to high school with Brett. So for those of you who don't know me, Brett and I were really close. And as strong as you were, and Jerry and Joelle, I don't know that I can be that strong today.
I can tell a joke on you to get you started. Brett and Grant, one day I looked out my kitchen window and they drove up. They were both covered in mud and they took these buckets full of golf balls
In mud.
out of the truck or car, whatever vehicle they had. The dam had broken at Toad Valley and they harvested those golf balls.
For practice balls for the high school. And I remember when they came in, I said, "You put those in Mom's new dishwasher?" I said, "You're in so much trouble."
Yeah, that's one story. Yeah, Brett and I had a lot of. What's that?
If you want the technical side, I can tell them about the oil change.
Yeah, tell them about that. I was going to tell them, but I think your story will be better. No, yours will be better.
Your dad, go ahead. Because I'm the one that really knows about cars out of the family. So,
Brent had about as much automotive skill as I do, which is not much. And he asked me about changing the oil, and I said, in his car, I said, well, it'll be a good lesson for you to learn. He says, you take the plug out of the bottom, drain it out, put new oil in. Pretty simple process. Those two went out, took the plug out of the transmission, drained the transmission. I don't know where you put any oil back in either. I don't know where that, but they ruined the transmission in the process.
I think.
what car was that?
That was
Was
a-
that the Cutlass?
No, it was the big boat, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
it was-
car
I can't
was-
remember what it was, but
Yeah.
it was a big boat. But yeah, so he's like, well, which one do we take out? I said, well, I'm not sure, but so he drained it, and I'm like, I don't think that oil is supposed to be that color. So he says, well,
Red.
yeah, it was red, and we checked the dipstick, and it was still pretty much full. And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. And for some reason, that car didn't shift very well after that. So yeah, Brett and I had a lot of really great stories. That a lot of them I can't share with you, or wouldn't dare to share with you. But one story that I'm going to share with you is that back in 2016, Brett's birthday was February 6th, mine's February 25th, and we would always call each other somewhere in between our birthdays every year to talk and catch up, because sometimes we talked a lot, and sometimes there was space in between the times that we spoke, but we always seemed to get some time in then. And one of the things I was really envious of Brett is back a few years ago, he got into doing triathlons, and I was very envious of him, and is in great shape. And so that particular conversation, I confessed that to him, and he said, well, you should train. We should train, and we should do an Ironman for our 50th birthday. And I said, there's no way. there is no way. I don't have the time. My body would not let me do that. He says, okay, well, you start training, and you do a couple short distance and then maybe a middle distance, and then we'll talk in like 6 months, and we'll decide then. And then he convinced me to come out to Seattle and train with him for 4 days. He could teach me some techniques and swimming techniques, and he was going to take me up on the path that he rode his bike, and so I agreed. And I think it was the night before I was scheduled to fly out, he called me, and I knew that he had acquired a tugboat, and I didn't know how, I didn't know why, but yeah, he acquired a tugboat, and he said, I need you to come out, take a cab out or Uber out and to Ballard, which is where his tugboat was moored. And we're going to be staying there while you're here. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I arrived that evening, and we went to the tugboat, and this tugboat had been moored for a very long time, had not moved. And but it was like the Fulton family's signature tug, and so the lower level had, it was kind of like a stateroom down below. But so anyway, the next morning we woke up, and I got my trunks on. I got ready, and we were going to go for a swim out in the harbor, and he was going to teach me some techniques. And so I jumped in. He said, "Go ahead and jump in the water and warm up and everything." And so I did that, and I start swimming. I start warming up, and pretty soon I hear Brett, and I turn around, and he's got a megaphone, and he's sitting on the back of his tugboat in a lawn chair with a megaphone and a Bloody Maria. And he's shouting out, "Grant, keep your elbow high. Grant, don't reach out so far. Grant, do this. Grant, do that." And I quickly realized Brett wasn't going to join me in the water. Brett was going to give me pointers from the back of his tugboat. So, needless to say, that was the end of our training. So I swam back to the tugboat, and I was trying to pull myself up on the back, and I said, "Hey, give me a hand." So he reached down, he bent over and set his drink down, gave me a hand. I pulled him in the water and climbed up out of the water, sat in the chair, drank his Bloody Maria, and grabbed the megaphone and said, "Swim, Brett, swim." And what's Brett do? He cackles. But one of the things I'll always remember about Brett is his laugh.
Oh, I know.
And I explain it or describe it as being a cackle, but that's one of the things I'll always remember about Brett is his laugh, and that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Like I said, I have many other stories that I would love to share, and I probably will share some through email with Jerry and Pat. But I'm gonna let someone else come up and share their story. Jerry, would you like to come up and share a few?
Kind of titled it up a little bit of Bridges of Time and Bridges of Miles. Brett and I met in early grade school as classmates, quickly becoming friends and started spending a lot of time at each other's homes. I remember us spending many hours playing the game Stratego and Battleship, trying to outwit the other and capturing each other's flags or ships, hiding our own with various strategies. We created plenty of mischief along the way, as well, with mini bikes, dune buggies, exploring outside, and whatnot at each other's home as we grew up. I would be remiss if I did not also include our dear friend Scott Kroger, who passed away while he was in law school from injuries in a motorcycle accident. The three of us spent a great deal of time together, and he is deeply missed. As we entered our high school, I began to attend Dowling, however, still hung out a lot throughout my high school years with Brett and several others. Brett loved his cars, especially his El Camino and his Triumph convertible, stereo systems. I remember a lot of his 8-tracks and cassette tapes and back in those days. So we even survived a little bit of a fender bender together. So upon graduation from high school, each of us joined different fraternities at Iowa State and hung out occasionally, but not as often. Yet each time we would reconnect after a gap in time, we picked right back up like it was yesterday. We last spoke like it was yesterday, the last time we last spoke, bridging the time span. Once graduating from college, Brett moved to Seattle and began his amazing career with Microsoft and the original team of Xbox. I remember him working and developing the now practically standard issue of the Microsoft ergonomic keyboard, and he sent me like a dozen of them to experiment back when I was working. We were pretty sporadic communicators at times. However, there was a solid foundation built as we were kids living in a peaceful and open countryside. I went to visit Brett in Sequim a couple years after he moved there. We spent a few days hanging out and seeing some sights up in the mountain. It seems after that visit we only connected a few times over the next probably several years, until about 2 years ago we reconnected and spoke for a good 2 hours, catching up on each other's lives. It was immediately clear to me how much he loved his children, Jack and Duke, and how proud of them he is, and how he yearned to be a good dad for them. We even scheduled some monthly calls on Sunday evenings and getting together when he was back here in Des Moines. Yet again, picking right up like little time had passed. That is true friendship. Brett had a lot of bridges in his life, bridges that connected him to many, many people, touching many lives. Brett was an intensely focused person. When he was working on something, that something was everything. With that comes speed. Things had to progress quickly, and if not, he would focus on everything to get through whatever was the roadblock. Brett was very, very intelligent and could master new subjects in no time and or create new technologies and new opportunities. I'm grateful for having Brett in my life all these years, and I am better for it. I'm saddened that I wasn't aware enough to help him build a bridge to a peaceful place in his mind. From my perspective, Brett managed a lot of bridges in life, bridges in technology from old to creating the next, bridges to old friendships and building new friendships, bridges between friends and family in Iowa and those in Washington State, and finally one last bridge from his life here to another in heaven. Rest in peace, my friend. Rest in peace. Give Kroger a high five for me and a hug until we meet again.
I am Rob Walker. I went to Bondurant with Grant and grade school with Jerry and Brett. And it's a lot of what I'm going to try to say, I think Jerry just said much more eloquently and much better than I'll be able to. I want to thank Jerry and Pat. They had Jerry Carpenter and Grant and I over for dinner a week or so ago, and that frankly helped a lot. When I found out that Brett had passed, it was really a gut shot. I don't know in my mind, I don't know if other people are like this or not. In my mind, when I start thinking about Grant, I start thinking about Brett, thinking about Scott. You go back 40 years and you're back there with them, and to some degree, you just feel invincible. We've got the whole world ahead of us, and everything is good. We really grew up great out here in a small community, in a small class, which I wouldn't have traded for anything. And I think we took it for granted. Looking back now, especially having children of my own, and they're in graduating classes of 400 and 500 people, and I really feel like they're just not going to have the same connection we did, that there's something there to be spoken of. Jerry mentioned, although I don't think he gave it its due, the car accident he and Brett were in back in high school, and it was no fender bender. I remember that like it was yesterday. I remember going down to the hospital, to the ICU, and it was like yesterday. And I think for me, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, Brett's going to be okay. He's going to be fine. That was his one. They didn't get him. That was his one. He's going to be good from here on out. To a certain degree, I think that's true. To a certain degree, I think now, looking back, that wasn't the case, and I'm ashamed of myself a little bit for not reaching out and being there a little bit more the last handful of years. But I think, looking back as I've done the last 10 days, 2 weeks, as we've kind of been talking about this a bit, I think a little bit, and it even is captured well in this picture, Brett's got that glint in his eye. He's got that little sparkle that he knew a secret none of us knew. He had that little grin and that little sparkle, and he knew something was up, which was very good. I almost equate it, be it right or wrong, I almost see Brett as our David Lee Roth, that just the way he carried himself and always, you know, was there to have a good time, to be a great friend, and to be a real support. One little story, I shared this the other night when we were having dinner. So it was, if I remember right, and it's been a long time, it was first Christmas break our freshman year of college, and we were back. And I'm sure Grant was there, and we met just down the street at Brett's house. And Gerald and Pat were there, I know. At least they walked in on us because Brett we had gotten there. We weren't there very long. And Brett decided, well, all right, everybody, you want a drink? Let's have a drink. I'll make you a drink. Okay, yeah, you bet. And out come water glasses that probably hold 20 ounces. And I think there was probably 16 ounces of gin and 1 ounce of tonic and an ounce worth of ice. And I took a drink of it and I said, what in the hell did you give me? Because I can't drink this. And he laughed and yeah, you can. He ruined gin for me. I haven't been able to drink gin since. So that's the memory I'm going to keep of Brett. Thank you all for coming. I know it means a great deal to Gerald and Pat and Joelle, and it's a nice statement to Brett as well.
We'll see if I can get through this. So I met Brett at Microsoft. He started before me. We both ended up working on video games at the same time. But he was working on keyboards and mice and joysticks and that type of stuff. I worked on the software for football games and racing games and that type of stuff. So I would work with him on steering wheels and how you got the software to work with the hardware. And Brett, the sparkle in his eye is the thing that stands out. I mean, he was so excited about what he was working on. He was incredibly smart. He knew this technology from the tiniest bit up to how the user interacted with it. And he knew the whole process, and he was able to put himself in the role of anybody who might be using the software or the hardware in a way that he just had this great empathy for anybody who would be using his work. And we did work on the Xbox launch stuff together. And yes, he was into you'd like to have a good party. I should also add that I grew up in Carlisle. So we didn't know each other then, but I'm sure we probably saw each other in sports and stuff way back, that type of thing. And the groups there gave us a lot of latitude. We worked really hard, and so they let us have our own barbecue, for example. So we had barbecue outside of our building, and we used to say that only the Midwesterners knew how to do barbecue properly. People in Washington were good at seafood, but they were not good at hamburgers. So yeah, when we found out that we grew up, 20 miles from each other, he used to joke that we could be cousins. Anyway, I just have so many fond memories of working with him. He was just incredibly intense about what he was working on, really proud of what he was working on. He was, back in those days at Microsoft, we would do parties where people could invite their families along. So there'd be trick-or-treating in the buildings, and he would bring Duke along, and all the kids would go from office to office. And I didn't have kids, but I always had great candy, so the kids. But he was such a good dad. So in addition to being there are a lot of people I think who get so tied up in their work that they don't necessarily focus the same on their family. And I was always impressed that Brett did that. He always had his boys front of mind. So in addition to being really smart, he was just really kind. And any project I ever worked on with him, having him on the team made it more fun. And it just made it seem more human. We worked our tails off, but we knew that there were people there, and I think he was a really key part of those teams. So. And then we were part of the same group at Microsoft. When the economy crashed, we were both working on the flight sim team. I was working on train sim, and he was working on community stuff for train sim and flight sim. And he was brilliant at community work. Honestly, the guy just knew how. Like I said, he knew how to talk to anybody about anything, and he was excited about it. He knew he was able to just relate to people in a way that I think was a real gift for him, and for anybody who got the chance to interact with him. And that was the first time that Microsoft had done layoffs. This happened after the economy crashed, and we kind of felt the target on us growing. They were talking about layoffs, but I think all of us sat back and went, we've been doing this for a long time. Flight Sim is it's an iconic part of what Microsoft does. So it was a shock. We'd all work so hard together to have the entire studio, it was like 132 people, blow up. Was really, I think that was kind of our first foray into grown-up problems. And we stayed in touch afterwards. I mean, I was on the tugboat too, as he was working with a group that was doing audio speakers. That tugboat was amazing. And it didn't matter, whenever I saw him, he was, again, smart up to the gills with whatever he was into. So he got that diesel engine running, and it was, time to have a big celebration, that's for sure. And the last I talked to him, he was doing the hemp work, and he was really excited about that and happy about that. So, I feel privileged that I got to know him, and I got to work with him, and I miss him a lot. I worry about his kids. I hope they understand how much he really loved them and went out of his way to be a good dad.
Thank you very much.
A couple other quick things, and thanks for the comments on Microsoft in the background there. That was important to me. One of the things that he did was work with, now I can't even think of it, aviation program, flight simulation program. And he one time said, come on up to Oshkosh, because they had a flight simulation booth up there. Microsoft had a big booth, so sure, I would drive up there, and Pat wouldn't go along, just me. And first off, I get a ticket in a little town in Wisconsin. That irritated me, but anyhow, got up there and ran into Brett, and we started doing things together, and it blew my mind. Kind of half funny and kind of half serious. We were out drinking, of course, and bar hopping, and bar hopping for me is about 2 hops. But anyhow, one of the bars, here's a guy Brett introduces me to, and I have to read his name because I know you'll know it, but I didn't for sure. And it was Dale Snort Snodgrass. You know who that is? That's the F-14 Top Gun. The movie was made after him, and I sat there and you drink with him, and he had great admiration for Brett. So I listened to the stories. Darn, I want to end up on a positive. I don't want to end up on a negative. One of the things we also did, we were very proud of him, and when he introduced the Xbox for Bill Gates in Las Vegas, and he traveled to Japan, he did all kinds of things with them, and Pat said it earlier, and Rob, you did too. This neighborhood, it takes a neighborhood to raise a child. And that's what happened with Brett. He was raised by all of you. Dang, I gotta quit. But anyhow, I wanted to tell you another thing before you get up your truck. One of his, when Brett went out to Washington, he went with a guy by the name of Smitty, Jeffrey Schnepf, and they traveled together, and they each had drove in different cars. So they depended on us to keep them connected by phone. So there I am sitting in the middle of the night trying to connect these two guys and where they're at on their travels so that they could get together. We finally got it done in the whole process, and they made it. Smitty phoned me back and emailed here recently. He's setting up a private trust for his son, Jack, for Brett's son, Jack. And it's a, I think it's called a 529 trust or something of that nature. And so that they're out there locally raising some money for that trust. In addition, many of you have supported and gave funds to the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation. And the other day, I haven't even shown this to Pat yet, a lot of his fraternity brothers got together and did a Zoom call. And I don't think she wants to hear all the stories that are in there. And I'm trying to filter this out a little bit in the process. But there's a lady that Brett became friends with, Tanya Brakeman. And Tanya is putting together stories. So as you send in or do any stories, she's going to put those into some kind of a structure about Brett's life. So make sure you do follow up on that. And again, can't thank you enough, and Grant and Rob and Jerry, and just appreciate everybody's coming here today. And you know, the song that he's playing is from Freebird. Brett and I were going to set up a foundation for Leonard Skinner, and Brett knew his family, talked to some of the family, and we'd moved it along, and I can't remember why we didn't finish it or what happened, but I'm going to end. Because the song is on the box. I can't read it, so anyhow, thank you all for coming. It's great to see all of you, and you're all great friends. You're all good family. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Dad.
Yeah.